Okay, nice. We are on the live stream.
All right, good deal.
Great. So what I want to talk about today is the topic is, can the church survive after COVID-19? So basically, I think there is a lot of change for the church service after we have the COVID-19, because previously we can go into the physical church building and attend a lot of the service. And we can also say greetings to the family members and hug each other. But currently everything went online, and only the online service is available every Sunday. But I think online service is basically, for me, it's like single input and out. There's no much interaction during the service. So the first question I want to ask is how the coronavirus impacts our church.
Like our like the
I think it's a general church, and I got some points here or some clues if we can think of some threats or opportunities, the differences between the online service and our real church service.
Yeah, I think off the top of my head, the church talks a lot about there's the infamous passage in Acts 2 discussing how the church came together, broke bread together. There's a lot of passages about coming together, spending time with one another, and that's huge. That's not a wise thing to do in the current state of affairs. And, that's definitely substantial. That's a lot of the draw for churches, is that sense of community. And so COVID-19 just disrupts that. I mean, but on the same side, we still have the ability, obviously, to connect. Like, obviously, us three are in this Zoom call right now. We're able to communicate and engage. It's not physical, but we're still able to communicate, and we're still able to share ideas and thoughts on things. Plus, the world is, broadly speaking, in the exact same place. So everyone's kind of on the level. So reaching out to people, talking with people, quote unquote, commiserating is a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because with this sort of isolation, with being distanced from each other, there definitely is that very, very strong possibility to drop the ball with some people or with all people. If some folks were not ready or prepared or committed at the very beginning to stay in touch with people, odds are it's going to be very, very hard down the road to get motivated or just to be staying in touch in general. And so I'm sure that there's probably a couple of people outside of our I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple of people inside of our circle or outside of our circle that have been more negatively impacted just because of issues communicating. Either just because it's not their main thing, or because it's tough to stay focused on people that aren't around you. I know that I definitely get a lot more from face-to-face interactions than I do from digital or virtual ones. I know that I can still get something from this, but I've got no doubt that we're going to see a lot of people be feeling very emotional from just being able to finally be around one another and being able to experience each other again.
Yeah. For me, what I think is the current online service is really good. We still have the interaction, and also we can reach out to people that with the long distance, like it's not near our location. The distance is not going to be the obstacle, but we can also involve them and invite them to attend our midweek or the Sunday service. But the threats that I was thinking is after COVID-19, if some people like feel uncomfortable one day, or if they feel lazy, And then they probably will say, oh, I don't want to go to church today. What if they have the online service and I can just watch online? So there were probably more and more people would prefer to stay at home instead of going to the physical, the church. But I think the current online service has barriers to entry, both for the church and for the person. Because for the church, it is very hard to put everything online. Like for our church, I know Sammy puts a lot of efforts to edit all videos and to combine all the videos, edit videos, and do the market things. And for the personal, it's also very hard to, it's not hard to entry, but I think for the personal, it's much more to put all the focus while they were doing the Bible study, because currently everyone is located in their own house. It's very, for me, it's very easy to be distracted while I am in my own personal area instead of in an environment like everybody engage into that Bible study. So I guess we have all the threat, both the threats and opportunity. So the next topic I want to bring up is like we probably have a new mission field, which is reach out online. So I guess most of the local church, like our church, we previously do most of the things is like physical touch, face to face. But now confronted with the COVID-19 situation, we probably can explore more chances to reach out to people online, like through Facebook or through the other social mediums, especially for our face group, because our mission is reach out. But we actually didn't do much work for reach out online.
Yeah.
So the point I want to get here is because, for example, if we're going to restaurants, we will see how much rating about this restaurants. Or if we're going to see a movie and we want to know what's the rating for the movie, do they have the good comments or bad comments? So the same thing, if a people wants to attend to a church or they want to involve into a church, then probably they will say, okay, do I have this relationship before I involve into the church? So I guess the things that we can do during this time is we can build a relationship with the people before they could actually involving in the church. And after COVID-19, they will be more comfortable for attending a church. What is everyone thinking about this online reaching out and contact?
The online reach out is interesting. It's definitely different. And in the absence of being able to like literally talk to someone face to face very easily or frequently, it's a different route it has its pros and cons. Like the one thing a lot of people always make note of about things on the internet is anonymity. You go to message boards, you go to different places, because there's this barrier, there's a separation between you and I on a very like personal level, so to speak. Like you and I both know each other. I know Matt, we all know each other, but you know, there are people I speak to on the regular online right now that I've never met face to face. And, you know, when the initial conversations begin, you can really say anything and you have a lot of confidence in it. I could post something on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and it's just like, oh, well, because I don't really see who's reading or responding to it, I can be a bit more brazen about it, be a bit more bold. We see that like generally with like online bullying and trolling, but there's also the reverse side. When it comes to reaching out, oh, I can just say things of my faith and I can feel a lot more confident about it because I don't actively have to engage in the conversation of someone responding back. And that's just true of anything. It's always easier when you don't have to actually say something that not everyone necessarily agrees or responds to immediately, and then you don't have to respond to it. So, you know, there is that aspect of being a bit more comfortable almost, of saying, yeah, this is who I am. This is my faith. This is what I believe. This is how I practice it. Would you like to attend? Also, you don't have to worry about dressing up. You don't have to worry about like getting out and driving out to a location. We're all stuck in a house together, or we're all stuck in our own places. Just open up your browser at this time on a Sunday morning and just join. And, you know, because of that ease, there's a lot less, of an investment cost, both by us as reaching out and even for a person who is being reached out to. It's easier. But, you know, then once that invitation is there, it makes the invitation easy, but the everything subsequent to that engagement, that's definitely a lot harder to follow through on.
Yeah, and to sort of tag on to that, I sort of feel almost the opposite to most of what you said there, Josue. um, Primarily in the sense of I can put myself out there and then that can be it. There's that part of me that sometimes thinks about anyone that may be looking to get into an argument or be a troll, if you will, just there to try to rankle someone up or that is serious. Um, or even just sort of me getting into my own head about what might this person be thinking of me. Are they going to perceive me at just, oh, there's that wild overly religious friend? Well, it's easy enough to maybe not open this message all the way or to just reject it, or before you know it we're just in this back and forth keyboard war, which no one really wants to be a part of. Or at least those are the things that come to mind for me when thinking about some of those things, which I don't tend to think about rejection that often. Well, rejection or pushback or anything like that very much when it's just a face-to-face interaction, which has usually been my preference or sort of default to go to. But yeah, I mean, it can definitely be super useful, no doubt. I mean, just being able to do some sort of online reach out can be immeasurably invaluable. And of course, it's not really so much on us to convince people. It's more about just, okay, let's try to put ourselves out there. And then of course it is definitely learning how to do this in a new and different way, and in a way that's just very public, I guess, whereas normally reach out is somewhat selective, right? Because it's just a one-on-one interaction. I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, and I feel like that we can have a more open and honest and direct conversation. Whereas digital conversation or just solely interacting by text, it's very easy to not be serious or to take too much time to let me make sure that I craft this message just right, that I say all the right things at all the right times or something like that. Yeah, or even just the thought of just seeing that message left unseen for months and just never any traction.
Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree. I think there will be a lot of difference with the physical contact and then just contact digitally. Because sometimes you see the text, and some people, they might be very actively online or on all the social media, but if you get to them physically attached, and you will see they are actually a very shy person. It's like totally different person that we see him online. So this is also the first one we're talking about, is this opportunity or the threat. I think most of the early adopters, they will say like, this is online service is going to be a really good opportunity for reaching out to the others, regardless the location all the time, or if you're going to do that in the place. Or they could, we could also like schedule the online Bible study, even if after COVID-19, if some people cannot go to some places physically or their time schedule is not working. But some of the traditionalists, they will hold the view, like saying they prefer to the physical contact, because the physical contact and the face-to-face conversation will get a better idea, like what their spiritual study go in. And then the second point I listed here is based on our discussion before, because we're talking about how to reach out online and the difference between reaching out online and reaching out physically. So Paul wrote letters to the different churches, but they also see him different with the letters he wrote and he showed up physically. What I'm thinking is there's definitely a difference between the online service and then the physical church. And the physical church is very important because this is Jesus' establishment. So Jesus come to build the church. It's not build the Zoom meetings or build any of the social mediums. And then the scripture I want to cover here. The first one is in the Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 to 2. Here it says, as God's example, therefore, follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and work in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. So this is part is Jesus come to us and he invited himself to the church. And then the other part I want to cover is in the Acts chapter 20 and 28, verses 28. Here it says, keep watch over yourselves and all the flock of which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers. Be shepherd of the church of God, which he bought with his own blood. So here is also addressed the importance of the church. Like Jesus invested in himself and sacrificed a lot of his love to the church. The question I want to bring up here is, what's the real function do you guys think about the church?
So it's interesting because I definitely grew up this way. When I think of the church, I think of the physical building. Mm-hmm. I think of a place of meeting, and that's certainly an aspect of it. But it's not quite literally those quote unquote four walls. It's the community they're in. Mm-hmm. We look at first century church, and they met wherever they could, in people's houses, in synagogues, just wherever, open plazas even. Here we are in a situation where we're called to not meet together, not because of persecution, not because of prejudice, or it's not the faith of the land, but because, quite frankly, it's for the benefit of society. We need to stop a spread of a virus, and make sure those who aren't as well off as us or as capable of enduring it can live and be healthy. And so then it gets to this really weird problem of like, well, we can't physically meet. What happens to the church? And the way I look at it is there a reason we haven't switched to online services before COVID-19? Absolutely. We can all agree we don't like it. We don't like, James Sunday morning preaching to us through the webpage, us sitting in our computer chairs. Just we don't like it. It's not the same. We're cultured. We've grown up, and to be fair, maybe there are just as many people in the world who like, yeah, absolutely, that sounds like a great way to like. I get to worship God alone in my room, but also see others in the community. Is there certainly advantages and disadvantages to both? Is there a preference? Absolutely. I think most of us prefer meeting in person, meeting in a building. But the way I see it is that the important aspect is the community as a whole. And that's not lost here. We still have, by the grace of God, technology. We have our phones. We have Zoom. We have the YouTube and the live streams. We have ways of still being able to connect to people. It's not as deep. It's not as well functioning. It's not as perfect, for sure. Mm-hmm. But in light of current events, it's what we have. And by God's ability, he can work through that. He can work through the challenges that we're facing. Because, in a lot of ways, it isn't to say that because we can only work through a web browser, God can only work through a web browser. No, he can work through anything. He can work through these circumstances. and that is totally possible. Like it's not limited. It's expansive and all encompassing. So I think the way I look at it is the function of the church is to bring together a community, absolutely, but it fosters us to want to care for each other. We're engaged in some capacity. We're having these small conversations. We're having conversations. We're having devotionals, Bible talks. I know people who are studying because of a Facebook page. Like these things are still happening, and so while it may not be as efficient or as capable, by the grace of God and by the power of God, they're still happening, and they can still be overcome in these situations.
Amen. Yeah, that's definitely one of the great things about God in general, is that no matter what the situation is going to be, that that something is going to work, and that's going to take faithful action on our part as well, and just being able to have a lot of trust. Just okay, no matter what, God's still going to be good, and God's still going to be working no matter what crummy circumstance we may have.
Yeah. I think that was what you had just said, faithful act on our part. I think that's really
Faithful actions.
Thank you. Is really the pivotal thing in that statement. Like we look at so many events throughout history where people were legitimately struggling, plagues throughout history, wars throughout history. We didn't like communication, like was at the turn of the last century, as far as long distance communication, that was instantaneous, and that was through the telephone, and that wasn't even like as like the infrastructure wasn't there for that.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
we're privileged in the grand,
we have the technology.
in the grand history of humanity. We are not all that inconvenienced. We can still communicate, we can still do things. I'm able to work from home. Like that's not a common thing. And so when we look at history overall, we see that the church has been able to thrive through these situations because people took faithful actions, and God works through that. Like we could look at, is me talking to 100 people going to be more or less effective than me making a tweet to 1 million people? I don't know, but if I act with faith, God can reward either one of those regardless. God can work through that. God can work through faith. But if we kind of recoil back and think, well, I don't think God can work in a situation where we're not being able to meet together as a church or things like that, there is no faith there, and God doesn't work through that. So I think that's really important, is are we being faithful in these situations, and are we acting on that? Because God will bless that regardless of how small it may seem to us, because we're simple beings. We have our routines. We have what the Bible says. We go through what we know works, and then when something disrupts that, we get all out of shape and think, well, that's not fair. This isn't going to work. It's honestly, we just humanize it and start thinking, well, my plan was better than anything else, and that doesn't really leave a lot of room for God.
Yeah, it's sort of like what the they had a much more severe situation, but I mean, first century church, when they were being persecuted and had to flee from Jerusalem, fleeing from various parts of Israel, they had to go and think to themselves, man, I'm being persecuted for this. Maybe I lost a family member or a friend. They're either in prison, or they had all their stuff confiscated, or they're dead. I wonder if I should continue to talk to the new people that I meet in the town that I flee to, or if I should just keep it to myself. But of course, we get to look back and see that that wasn't the approach that they had. They didn't shrink back in fear. It was, no, regardless, I'm still going to speak, and I'm still going to act, even if doing so might get me killed. I'm still going to talk. And the church spread rapidly, and it was pretty widespread, and for better or worse, it spread. And when I mean better or worse, for better or worse for the person, um, sharing, for the person living out that faithful life.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it didn't work out so great for them. Just sometimes they died, and sometimes they didn't.
Yeah.
But souls were saved at the end of the day.
Yeah, I totally agree. It reminds me the preach that we had in the last couple of weeks of the Sunday service, because people was talking about most of the faithful actions is based on our daily decisions. Like even the small decisions will make very difference for our faith actions in the big picture. Like if I'm lazy today, I don't want to watch the service, I don't want to attend the midweek, then because everyone is quarantined at home, nobody really cares that you're watching it or not. It's totally dependent on you and yourself if the faith is going to drive you keep doing this at this time. For me, I basically very miss our church service because I'm the person that like really likes to hug each other, and I really like that the physical touch with each other, and also I like the greetings and the engagement of that church service environment. So I think the online service wouldn't have that physical contact for me. Even though I could interact with people like talking, but because it's like the screen, it's only talking through the screen. It's not like express most of the true feelings. And also it's hard to expose most of my vulnerability. Next one. Oh, next one is an interesting question. It's the local churches versus the mega churches. So some people in this scenario, they were say some of the local churches, we can just close out the local churches service because everyone is watching the church service. Then we could only have the big church services and everyone watch the big church services, and then local church service doesn't have to do anything. So what do you guys think, what's the difference between the local church and the macro church?
One of my understandings, I've never been a member of a very,
Mhm.
very large church. I mean, the largest membership of a church I've ever been a part of was 110, 150, something like that. But my understanding from what I've heard in churches that are much larger, I mean, even 500 people or so, is that if people are not connected, if they're not involved and invested in each other's lives, it's very, very easy to just continue attending services or not, to keep on living whatever lifestyle that you are, and to just sort of fly under the radar without any accountability. And not only just sort of skirting by without accountability, but without having some deeper, more involved connections with the people there.
Yeah, mega churches, by reputation, I'm not going to go and say that this is wholesale the truth, but by reputation, they're very much you go, you consume the information, whatever it may be, and you leave. There is no personal obligation. You don't feel tied into anything. You don't feel driven. Now, granted, I'm sure there are plenty of people who go to mega churches and they engage with those who, quote unquote, sit right beside them. Oh, we always happen to come at the same time. Let's go out for lunch, or oh, you know what, you're a neighbor right down the street, or there's other things that tie a familiarity and allow a level of bonding to occur within that environment. But overall, they definitely are more of I want to hear but not engage personally or be personally involved. They lean towards that by reputation. Again, I'm sure someone's going to come along and say, well, I'm super, and that's 100% true. I do not doubt in the least that there are people in mega churches who are actively involved, but it's so much harder when it's so much bigger. And it's so much easier to just go into that. It makes you feel like you're a part of something without actively being a part of something. And so, yeah, I think, local churches, it's one of those things where I'm really happy we can do this. Really happy we can stream service. Not because I want that to be the default going forward, but because if something comes up in the future, I know we can do it. That there won't be a Sunday that's like, well, we don't have a building. you know what, we'll do this Sunday. I feel the same way about like working from home. I'm happy that I know I can work from home, but I am looking forward to returning because I like that environment more. I feel more involved in that environment. And so I think, once this is all said and done, I'm sure that will be the way a lot of churches will look. Hey, we could do this. It'll save on costs, or we can combine, or whatever. There's 100 scenarios that could work. And all I'm thinking is, yeah, but I don't want online. This doesn't actively engage me in the community. I could go anywhere in the world at that point. Like that's not doing anything for me. I want to be actively there. So I think that's definitely important for me, at least. I'm sure again, there are people who take it or leave it. That's not important to them in the same level, but I think there is something to be said for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I prefer to go to the local church. I never attend one of the mega church services or involved into one of the mega churches. But I feel like local church gives me the environment of a family. Okay, everyone knows each other, and everyone trying to know what the other's struggles or what's the other's problems, and everyone trying to figure out how to help with each other. So I think there's a group of people that we have a relation with. It's more like my family here. And also the things that I bring up to my mind is Paul once write individual letters to individual churches. It's more based on their own situation. He's not writing like one letter to all the churches. Like sometimes they do the census service and it will say, dear resident, and blah, 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 all the things is the same. But everyone has this, has a different situation and their dilemma or their struggles or their fightings. So I think it's more makes sense for us to communicate this gospel properly with the different contents depends on the person. The scripture here I mentioned here is in Hebrew chapter 13 verses 7. It's very short. Basically, it's talking about the importance of the leaders. Here it says, remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. So I think the leaders was mentioned here is not a very high level leader, which doesn't know our situation, doesn't know our struggles or our difficulties, but the leaders really close to us, really know everyone's problems, everyone's situations. So, and also there is a trust built based on this local level instead of a very general level. Okay, I think this is the last slide that I have. The last one that I want to bring up is the missionary church. So considering this situation, we definitely need to do some of the ministry online. Like we did most of the Bible studies online currently, and we can keep reaching out online and build the digital front door. For me, I want to bring up this because our faith group is supposed to be reaching out, but the current situation is very hard for us to reach out on the street or get a physical touch. So I just want to challenge every one of us trying to reach out online and doing some of the ministry online work.
I find it interesting, like when this idea was originally proposed and we were thinking about what to do, online stuff never even crossed my mind. And I don't think I would have ever explored trying to reach out online, whatever that looks like. And now I'm in a situation, we're all in a situation where we're kind of forced to do that. And, I don't like it. I don't hate it. But it's an experience and it's a challenge and it's an opportunity that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Like I would have never self-imposed this or tried to do it exclusively. And, for as much as I can talk about that, I'm sure there's someone in our church or otherwise who was like, oh, I'm flourishing in this. Like, I feel right at home. And I never had the opportunity to really do it this way before. And I think, we always have to look at a bigger picture than ourselves.
Right.
And I think, bless those who are able to thrive from this opportunity, who look at it as like, yeah, I get it. Like it's tough, it's hard, it's not easy, but this particular aspect, it just makes sense to me. It clicks, and they just run with it. And once this is all said and done, I know more confidently that this isn't my thing, and someone else knows more confidently that it is their thing. And there's a lot of value in just being able to know what does and does not work for you.
Sarah, I really appreciate your challenge and your questions, and it's getting my mind to turn over a little bit. One of the things that I've put out there publicly and have talked to people about has been going to public places with a little bit of signage, which essentially encourages people to come on over to talk with us about God, about faith, about the Bible, and just sort of, to be able to go about it in such a way that I'm going to give you the best answers that I can. We're going to look at the Bible as much as we can. We can look at history as much as you want. This is going to be, a no blame, no harsh judgment zone. We don't have to agree with each other, but we also do not want to promote a bunch of unnecessary arguments or to just go into these long debates or anything like that. But there's no reason why that can't be done in this sort of format online. That if we were to essentially be doing some outreach where it's your Bible questions answered or something like that. I mean, that sounds a little bit pretentious. Like I said, I don't want to assume that we've got all the answers that someone may be posing, and there's a very strong chance that people would just want to argue with us, but I can still see the potential to be able to essentially host something where we're just taking some time to openly talk about the Bible, to respond to people's questions live. Like, I'm totally down for that. And while we may not be able to do that in person, being able to do that online is totally possible.
Great. Sounds good. And that's all. That's all for today. Cool. Thanks for watching.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
I will remember this time just to stop stream instead of stop everything.
But we're still live on YouTube.
Yes.
She'll get it.